Hi, Kate. Can you take a moment to just introduce yourself?
Hello, my name is Kate Pavlovska. I'm originally from Ukraine. I have been living in Canada since 2017.
So, Kate, tell me what it looks like for you today.
The first thing that comes to my mind is hard. It's really hard mentally and psychologically, provided I have family back in Ukraine. My parents, my in-laws are there, dispersed all over Ukraine. They're all safe right now in relative safety. But it's very hard because it's unpredictable and this can change at any moment. The first day that the attack of Russian forces happened, my parents live in a region that's neighboring Crimea, in Kherson region. And they're actually even closer, like their house is even closer to Crimea than actual Kherson is. So they heard shelling noises. They were woken up by them around 5 a.m. in the morning. And they were very scared. Apparently, well, obviously very stressed. They called us and they said that they were leaving, and they actually made the right choice, it looks like, because right now Kherson is one of the most active points of fight between Russians and Ukrainians. Everyone was in shock, actually, like when this started happening. No, like I don't think anyone in my family or my friends even believed this might happen. The war in Donbass was going on for what, 8 years now, since 2014. There was a lot of back and forth, but it wasn't as brutal, I guess, to the extent of the amount of aggression. It was very hard, but the territory was so limited. So when attacks started to be made by the Russian planes on the whole territory of Ukraine, and they were very much coordinated. Like in the first hours, it seemed like, oh my goodness, the country's going down in flames. It was so scary. It's hard, but we're keeping hopeful. Our army, our military forces are strong, and they have been preparing for this for years now, because they knew that that Russia will do tricks, possibly, and unfortunately the worst has happened, and everyone was hopeful this is not going to escalate that far. But we are where we are, and right now people are getting angry and they're getting active. Like right now there's organized military, there's the territorial forces, that people that are not really trained as military, but they are actively participating. There's the National Guard, like everyone's doing their part.
Kate, tell me, what do you do in Canada?
Meaning?
What is your work?
Work? I'm an accountant right now in a company that does security consulting.
So you're in high tech, and
yeah.
Your husband?
My husband is a engineer programmer at MasterCard.
Okay. Tell me about your family. Tell me about your parents. How old are they?
My dad's 55. My mom's 58. My mom's a housewife, and dad, he's an entrepreneur. He's a business owner back in Ukraine.
And what is the situation today for people under 60 in the Ukraine? Are they able to leave the country?
They are not able to leave the country. I may not be translating the term correctly, but I believe it's called martial law, where across all territory of Ukraine, all men aged from 18 to 60 cannot leave the country because they may be called to join the armed forces.
Well, so your dad is 55 years old. Is he in good health?
Well, relatively good, I guess, provided the age. He has like some heart problems and like hypertension problems. Nothing severe per se, but I don't think he's really fit for the army. Like a lot of people aren't, like not trained. Like he never was like in the army training in the past. So
what is his reaction to that? Because as I understand what you're saying, is your father and, you know, all men under 60 may be asked to pick up arms and fight Russian soldiers.
Well, I guess it's a little bit more complicated than that. So it's not really just pushing everyone out on the front lines. Rather, army is a sort of a complex system that requires not only the fighters on the front, but also the backup. Yeah. So I guess like any sane army in the world or like military power in the world, Ukrainian army administrators would be making certain decisions and determining who's more fit to be on the front lines. And as far as I can tell from the response so far, there's a lot of people willing, and there may not be even like, you know, like the amount of people willing to be on the front lines is a lot, but no one's going to send people who are not trained properly, who are not well equipped to the front lines.
So just help me understand this, because it just seems to me that the scale of things between Russia's military power and the Ukraine's military power is really outsized. And it seems like a David and Goliath situation. How would you, is that accurate?
I don't think I can really accurate, like I don't have enough information, I guess, to accurately estimate that. I know that Russian army is probably relatively bigger in size, provided the population of Russia is so much bigger than Ukraine's. Basically, I have never like really researched that directly, but I know that the Ukrainian military personnel have been actively involved in multiple, you know, programs from, you know, like of support and provision of training, military training on like more sort of like Western standards and like NATO standards, participating in the what are they called, like the trainings sort of with NATO troops.
How are your parents feeling about the situation today? Like, have you been in touch with them this evening?
I have been in touch with my parents, and the internet and the mobile connection is working relatively well. So they're at this time, they're safe because they fled to the central western part of Ukraine right now. And they're in relative safety.
Good, good. And how are they feeling about the situation? What does it look like to them?
They were more or less in very high adrenaline panic mode when they were fleeing. It was very scary. Today, they're a little bit more calm, and they're just trying to focus on living day to day and not think about what's going to happen next, because that brings too much stress. And
are they with friends? Do they have a community around them at all?
No.
Family?
Well, they live in a hotel that basically has all the people that fled
Taken
from
away.
elsewhere, like they don't know anyone there. But it doesn't, like there's no shelling in where they are. So I guess they're feeling okay.
Yeah. And have they been to visit you?
They have, yes. They have last November, they stayed for a few months with us, and then they actually left a few weeks back. So I think it was 4 weeks back when they left back to Ukraine. And yeah, I wish they did it.
Yeah, you must just want to rewind that and make them be here.
Yes, I kept thinking about that the whole day yesterday. If only I was more firm on my request.
So you felt like it a month ago?
No, I was just like, when originally they were planning to come, I was suggesting that they stay for a bit longer, but they said, well, they had commitments at home, you know, the house, my dad's work. So
That really,
like
that
it really didn't, like they couldn't commit to months of stay.
that sounds like what any of us would be like in this situation. I think,
Well,
you know,
exactly.
yeah, we would, it's so easy to relate to how that could all happen. But on the other hand, there's been, you know, talk of this for weeks.
That's true. At the same time, I don't think anyone was really expecting the actual escalation to happen, at least not the, you know, us regular day-to-day people.
Yeah.
Because this kind of bully behavior on behalf of Russia and their intent and their, you know, them trying to be sounding tough and cool to, you know, someone to be like, you know, accounted for in the world politics, that all seemed like a little bit of overplaying.
Yeah. Well, do you think that we should, you know, like there's a lot more posturing going on now, and you know, it's just really so scary, you know, like to hear talk of nuclear war now, you know, like Putin threatening Europe and America with nuclear war. Like, how do you feel about that now, having been through this whole process? Should we take Putin seriously?
I don't know. I honestly, like, ask me a week ago, I would probably say, yeah, no, that's just pure talk. Right now, I'm not sure. Are they sane enough to, you know, to understand, you know, what's going to happen if they are to take a step like that?
And Kate, like, you must have a lot of friends there too.
Yes. Yeah. Well, basically everyone we have been in touch with, they've fled because most of them are in Kiev.
Mm-hmm.
It has been pretty hard because everyone was fleeing more or less into one direction, provided, you know, the attack was planned. So it comes sort of from 3 sides. So everyone's basically fleeing westward. Mm-hmm. And therefore, there were a lot of, you know, like stress and people crowding on highways, on the trains, on any type of, you know, transit or vehicle that could bring them out of the city westward, of the capital city westward, or there, you know, where they live, westward. Yeah, so it wasn't easy, but in these, like in the trying times like this, you know, the better sides of people are also coming to light. You know, everyone's relatively quick to self-organize. There's now initiatives for people in the western part of Ukraine to, host people who are fleeing, understanding that they have a lot of them have nowhere to go, because how many people have, their families left back in the eastern part or southern part, right? And everyone's just trying to stay as safe as possible. So yeah, it's there's rays of hope and rays of goodness, I guess, in bad situations like this. I mean, it brings both the worst and the best in people, but I think as the time goes on, it's probably gonna show the first stress of being shocked with this happening is gonna pass, and people will probably become even more self-organized and better at defending themselves and doing supporting Ukrainian army and protecting our independence in which way they can. I'm not saying about going to the military and doing being in the front, but just being there for everyone, for each other, and supporting those who are fighting as much as possible. And we're outside of Ukraine, this is what we plan to do too. I mean, it's just so little time passed before we could even open our eyes and understand, oh my goodness, what's going on. Now that we are becoming more calm and the stress goes out, we are ready for action, and we will be taking steps to help as much from outside as well. So, Ukraine will not be left alone, even provide in the view of us Ukrainians outside of Ukraine helping and doing our best, because we know and we care probably more than anyone else.
I'm sure that's true. And yet, I think for those of us watching it, many of us, it feels very close and it feels very personal. And I just wonder what you would like to see people do. What can we do in your mind? What can Canadians do to help?
I think it's hard to say right now. I'm really not sure at this point about the specifics. I haven't done my full research yet, so I can't really, name names or say things, but general direction would be supporting the humanitarian aid efforts, supporting the refugee efforts, and providing refugee status to those willing to come to Canada. I know Canadian government is already escalating review of some of the permanent residency applications, which are now in their queue for specifically for Ukrainians, for Ukrainian families. And I think that's invaluable for a lot of people. Just if they can keep going in that direction, that would be helpful. And, I guess military training support, but I don't think this is even relevant at this time, provided there's active military action. No one would be probably, doing that at this point. I'm rambling on. I'm out of thoughts.
Yeah. No, this is not a practice speech. This is happening in real time. And
yes,
it's really poignant watching the president give his, just his situation. It seems so scary. He thinks, he says I think he feels like he's the first person that they really want to kill. And he's also worried about his family. What are your thoughts on that?
In the trying times like this, it's very hard to keep composed and keep, to keep one's face, especially when, all the eyes of the world are on you.
Yeah.
I think he's doing the best he can, and he's really trying, but he's a human.
Yeah.
Of course, he would be scared. Of course, he would thinking of his family and his family's safety at this time. I personally don't think, as a president, especially in the face of Russian aggression, that would project the right image of him to the enemy. However, on a human level, I so much understand where he's coming from.
I have one more question for you, Kate, and again, I think we all project ourselves into these situations when we see them unfold and try to think of what we would do in that situation. And I wonder what, in terms of Ukraine's independence and, future as a country, do you feel like Ukrainians are just going to fight to the end for that? Like, how important is that to Ukrainians to be independent from Russia?
I think it's very important for Ukrainians, because Ukraine is, a national state that historically has existed before Russia did, right? So will people fight to the end? A lot of them will. I will not say, like in any society, not everyone would be fighting to the death, like not 100%, but a lot of them will. And people understand that they have no other choice. It's hard to be a country that's neighboring a much bigger one with a dream to keep being an empire they are. I personally don't understand this imperialistic mentality, trying to unite so many different nations and peoples in one, and for what? It just doesn't make sense to me for this to be a reason for a war, or for, for them to want to, attack someone else for that. But I personally, like, if someone would attack me, I would fight back. And I guess, like, on personal level, on like country to country level, that's probably what's going to be happening. There's going to be resistance in a lot of different ways going on. Russia will not take Ukraine easily. People will resist. There's no sentiment of, opening their arms and hugging Russians for coming to, to grab our independence and to say, here we are, you're liberators. Now you're a part of our great country. That's not how it works.
What do you make of the outpouring in Russia on the streets and among celebrities saying, we don't want this war?
I don't think I have enough knowledge to really comment on the Russian, opposition to the war. Overall, of course, it's good, and it's natural. There's going to be sane people with, that, put human values on top of imperialistic values. That's not like any society would have that, right?
Yeah.
I think historically it has been proven that opposition in Russia is relatively weak, and provided the leader like Putin trying to oppress everyone with as much brutality and force as they can, I don't think it will really make a difference, although it's very nice that they're trying. I honestly don't think anything will change. Even if Putin's no longer there, people that are within the structure of power that he represents are still going to be there. So honestly, going forward, I don't know what's going to happen. And it may not be a direct reason, but it's one of the reasons why we left for Canada, because the way of life and it's a structure of life in a country like Russia will be always more or less threatening the countries around them.
Mm. Well, Kate, I'm glad you and your family are safe here. And I hope that your parents come out of this okay and safely, and, you know, maybe get back to Canada soon to be with you. And I really want to thank you for joining us today and sharing your story and what's going on in your perspective on this incredibly troubling situation.
Thank you.